Good evening. Happy Wednesday. This is Naomi, the How To Chick, and I am here Wednesday night. It is midweek and it definitely feels like a Friday at 10 p.m. But I hope that your week is going well. I am having a phenomenal week. I am enjoying a week of prayer that's being put on conjointly with my church, Breath of Life Seventh day Adventist Church, and the Community Praise Church Women's Ministry Department. It is virtual. And you know what? I should drop the link to it in the comments because if you want to talk about a blessing, if you want to talk about a blessing, the blessing that I have received from this week of prayer has been immense. And all of the videos from each night are available to watch. I'm going to drop them in the chat. But anyway, it's not why you're here. Good evening. My name is Naomi. I go by the How To Chick. I'm a child of God, a wife, a mom, an attorney, a coach, a mentor, and a speaker. Most importantly, I believe that you can do anything, but you can't do everything, and you have to choose wisely. And tonight I'm coming to talk to you about how to step out on your faith. I don't know about you, but I am a list person. I like to know what I'm going to do. I like to make a plan for how and when and where I'm going to do it. And I want to make sure that when I do it, right, it's done properly. I have always been like that. I was the person, I've shared this with you guys before. I was a person who had a lot of to-do lists. I kept my to-do lists and I was always checking them off and checking them 2 and 3 times to make sure that I did everything that it was that I felt was necessary to complete what I needed to complete. And it's good, right? If you guys have ever heard the saying measure twice, cut once, it's good to be able to know that what you're doing is right and that you have already done your due diligence. But sometimes we can get stuck in the process. And I came to talk to you guys about that tonight because I had a boss who used to say, Naomi, you're a perfectionist. Perfect is the enemy of done. And he would say that all the time. He'd be like, look, just write something down, because I would get stuck in my head. I would be reading all the cases. I would be reading all of the precedent. I would be, reviewing things that I had done previously. I had 1,050,000 things that I felt like I had to do before I sat down and started writing anything, pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, whatever you want to call it. I had processes. And sometimes the processes really were the enemy of me actually accomplishing what I set out to accomplish. And so he said to me, perfect is the enemy of done. And it reminded me tonight that I still do that in certain things, right? I'll make a checklist of things that I want to do, and then I'll break them out into small steps. And then I'll realize that for one of the steps, I don't have something that I need. And I'll do what I think I'm supposed to do to try to get what I need or figure something out. But if there's a person, right? If there's an approval, if there's some reason that I can't get a response right away, I could be stuck on that step for months. And this has happened to me in many projects. If you guys are in corporations or enterprises where you've had to do project management, you know that a big part of project management is recognizing that you may be getting inputs from different parts of the enterprise, from different business units. There may be many things that have to go in and approvals that have to be gotten, right, from the CEO's office, from the office of the general counsel, from operations, right, from IT. You might have a million little steps, and getting those steps together to get a finished product is a reason why by project management requires its own certification and kind of whole program, because it's hard. It's hard to know everybody that you need to have at the table sometimes when you're starting a project, when you're trying to figure things out. And there are a lot of things I've done in my life, right? I've planned a wedding in 90 days and done it. And it actually went really well. I decided to go to law school on a whim in March and moved across the country in May and did it. I, moved back across the country. I've done a lot of things on relatively short notice. But what I notice is that the longer that I have to complete something, the more speculative, right, the outcome is, the less likely I am to push past those little steps that get me stuck. And so I'm coming to you tonight to remind you that if you have a goal, a dream, a vision, something that you want to do, start a business, right? Move to another city, buy a home, done and perfect are not usually synonymous. Sometimes you just gotta pick up the phone and call a realtor. Sometimes you have to just go onto a few websites and get some information for course credit. Sometimes you have to reach out to someone and ask them how they got where they are to get the information that you need to get where you want to be. And sometimes you have to make an investment. Sometimes you have to buy something or pay something. And I've talked to you guys about times where I've had to make investments in myself to get returns. But the most important investment that you can make in yourself is a mind shift, is the recognition that faith, as the Bible says, you guys know I'm unapologetically a God girl, faith without works is dead. And so I'm coming to you tonight to remind you that even if you are finding yourself stuck, you don't have the resources, financial or otherwise, to do what it is you want to do. You want to go back to school, but you don't have a babysitter. You want to buy this vehicle, but you aren't sure that you have the credit to support it, even if you have the down payment and the income. You want to move, but you don't know enough about the city or town that you want to live in. The most important thing you can do is take the first step. For the first scenario, you wanna go back to school, but you don't have a babysitter for your kids. Have you told people? I've talked many times about how sometimes we get stuck in our heads, and this is a big problem I have. I get stuck in my head, and I don't wanna ask people until I'm completely clear on every step so that I can give them everything, and sometimes people don't need everything. They just wanna help you, and they're willing to flow with you, and I've experienced that kind of grace. I'm experiencing that kind of grace this very week with people who are bending over backwards to help me in ways big and small. And God, I thank you. But it would never have happened if I hadn't asked, if I hadn't said, this is what I'm struggling with. Can you help me? Sometimes you have to take a step on faith. If you're desiring to move to another country or another city or another town, just researching the environment, researching the types of jobs, or if you have a remote job that you can take with you, even better. But researching the schools, researching what it costs to live there and the logistics isn't enough. Sometimes you got to get boots on the ground. You have to say, hey, instead of going on a vacation this summer, I'm going to get a flight and go out to this city. I'm going to go check out Chicago. I'm going to go check out Iowa. I'm going to go check out Atlanta. I'm going to figure out if this is really something I want to do. And a lot of times we get stuck because we are afraid to make the big move without actually seeing it. But we never think to ourselves, we find all of these other flaws in the plan. We never think to ourselves, I should just go. I should just go. When it comes to almost anything you want to do, there's always going to be a number of steps that you don't think of. But if you never start moving, you'll never figure out how to get past those steps. It's so important to give yourself grace and realize that you don't have to do it perfectly the first time. Nothing that anyone has ever done has been perfect the first time, except maybe God. He did everything well. But we're not God. And we can't continue to hold ourselves to those kind of standards. We have to hold ourselves to a standard of done. And the standard of done says, I'm going to try and I'm going to do my best. And if I fail, I learn through this failure. This culture and this, and I know I suffer from this. So I'm not even going to say the culture. A lot of us suffer from fear of failure that paralyzes us. It keeps us from wanting to try anything because we're so afraid of what people will say. But have people done what you're going to do? If so, talk to them. I'm sure that they would actually encourage and support you unless they're not our kind of people. It, are people going to deal with the fallout of your failure? If so, like, you want to start a business and your spouse has reservations, you should sit out, talk to them, make a business plan and find out what their reservations are and work through those. But fear is never a reason to not try. And I know that that sounds counterintuitive because fear is the thing that keeps most of us from trying anything. Fear is the reason, fear of rejection is the reason we don't say hi to that man or that woman that we look at and they look nice, but we don't want to be weird and we don't want to be a creep and we don't want to be rejected. Fear is the reason that we don't open our businesses up to our family members because we don't want people talking about us and we would feel so hurt if they didn't support us. Understand this. Most people who own businesses know this. Your biggest supporters aren't going to be your friends and your family, but if they don't know about it, then they can't tell other people about it and by extension help you because, your client base is going to be what your client base is going to be. And maybe they'll support you, maybe they won't. But if they care for you, they will help you in the ways that they can. What about situations where we need an investment? We need financial help to do what it is we need to do. And this is one that a lot of people get stuck on. They map out this great business idea, this great plan, and they recognize that they cannot financially afford to do it. And there are one of two schools that I've seen a lot of people take. One is begging, setting up GoFundMe's, asking people for money without further. And the other is just being quiet and saying, well, I'll never save this much money. I'm not going to be able to do this business. I need to pivot, find something else. But your heart is with that business. There's a middle ground. There is a way to do something. And I always encourage people to take your time and find people who have done what you're trying to do. Talk to them about how they got where they are and what they got. If you need resources, it's important to have a business plan. If you need investors, it's important to make sure that you have good credit and you have funds to invest in yourself. But if you want something, you have to be willing to sacrifice for that something. Not everyone has to be homeless like Tyler Perry and live in their car. Not everyone has to forego dating and family because they want to pursue their craft. But sometimes you might have to forego brunching. You might have to forego eating out. You might have to forego buying that car and jump on the metro or the subway. You might have to forego living a lifestyle, right, that represents the income that you have because you want your lifestyle to reflect where you're going instead. And so don't do it backwards, right? Don't live now like you have the income that you aspire to. Live now like you have nothing and save everything that you have so that you can move to that lifestyle. And sometimes that does require not just faith, but that requires a lot of conversations with people around us, and expectations have to change. And we have a hard time with that. I had a hard time with that. I had a hard time saying, no, I can't go out. I have to pay off my student loan debt. No, I can't go on this vacation. Get out the group chats. I hope my friends are not watching this because they will have you vacationing your future away. I'm going to say that. I'm going to leave it there. But just know, if you step out on faith, if you make the first move, and then the second move, and you guys know I'm unapologetically a God girl. I'm always going to say, what does God say? The word of God says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. But what it also says is faith without works is dead. So we can believe God for something, or we can believe that God will do for us in accordance with our faith and go do something. Which one are you going to do? Next week's going to be a testimony service, guys. But for tonight, I'll remind you, step out and try. The worst that can happen is you fail. But the best that will happen even then is that you learn something that will keep you from failing the same way next time. Remember, you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. Choose wisely. Good night.